All right, let's get back to some boring subjects.
Understand the risk to our country.
Freedom brings people together.
You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to the Chris Spangle Show. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to see if there are any threads. Somebody turn off your email. Old man Wohlgemuth over there. I can tell. I know who it is.
Me, I'm killing it now.
Yep.
My wife's blown up.
We're going to talk about the various trials and see if there are any threads between Aubrey, Rittenhouse, Kizer, and Maxwell, and the Waukesha, I'm so sorry, Wisconsin, murders, essentially. So stay tuned. We're going to talk a lot about criminal justice reform and trials and these various cultural events. Stay tuned.
Warning. This show is for adults by semi-adults, so the language is sometimes strong and offensive.
I don't know what I said.
Welcome to the Chris Spangle Show. Our goal is to help you sound smarter while talking to your friends. If you struggle to understand politics, we explain it from an independent, libertarian point of view. With all of the irreverence it deserves, we toss out the screaming heads, put people before political parties, and give context to the news to make you think. Now, here's our host, Chris Spangle, a 15-year veteran of politics and media.
It's always funny to me when I see on Twitter or run into somebody and they repeat back the intro to me. If you heard in the media episode that we did recently, I was introduced basically with that script. It's always funny to me. I'm excited this week. It is the end of a long year, and to join me today to talk about some of these trials, we have a cast of all-stars. First up is Harry Price. How are you?
Going good. Just, long week, long 2 weeks.
Isn't it?
It just seems like it almost feels like the November that never ends. It's just not going to end. All kinds of cool surprises, twists and turns.
Well, if I sound slow today, it's from 2 days of Thanksgiving. I'm just a mess everywhere. And also here is Rhinehold. How are you?
I'm doing well. Been up for probably 14 hours, so going good. We just ride this train on out.
You look like you're about to jump out of a painting and fight the Ghostbusters.
They deserved it.
And also with us is the lovely Tricia Stuart-Mann.
Hello. Happy Thanksgiving.
Host of Gingerarchy. Go subscribe to that. And then a co-host on Enemy of My Enemy is Brian Wohlgemuth. How are you, Brian?
Good, sir. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. You guys all watched all these different trials, but first I want to say Harry will be hosting next week. Harry has been doing a great job. Part of his contract renewals is that once a month he's going to host an episode, and you always pick topics, Harry, that I would never have any remote interest in doing, but when I listen back, I always find it interesting. Do you have any idea what you are going to be talking about next week?
I actually do, and I just realized I went to go grab my notebook that I've been keeping my notes in, because if you write it, also the other thing is I tell people you don't have to remember things if you write things down.
What?
So you can just remember things that you need for topically. So I actually have wrote down a whole schedule.
Somebody write that down.
Do.
Trisha, take note. I'm sorry,
Not my notepad.
that was sexist. Rhinehold, write that down.
Actual paper? Paper and pen?
Yes, physical paper.
There's OneNote. I don't understand. This is foreign to me.
I use Simple Note.
All right. Well, if you
so you don't know what you're talking. You do know what you're talking about. You just have no concept of what it is in your brain at this moment.
Well, I've got written down an order that I wanted to talk to them on. So right now they're just kind of in my head, but I don't know what order I put them in. I
have so many shows in my head that I want to do, and the pipeline from brain to microphone is I don't know. When I got COVID, something happened to my brain and my ability to think. Which I think is showing up on this show if you're listening. But yeah,
you should drink more black coffee. That'll help.
All right.
But because the one episode I've been working on that is really interesting is the one on smallpox. Okay. Not just because it keeps popping up in the news, and so many of us, like millennials, and have a passing like, oh, it's smallpox. It's just the thing that people keep talking
Well,
about.
that is the new conspiracy theory around Bill Gates. Have you heard this?
Yes.
So for those who don't know, here I copied and pasted this from 4chan just so I could have it. But is that any reason why you're talking about it?
No, I just think the reason I wanted to bring it up is just some people keep bringing up smallpox. And it's actually the thing I really like. The genesis of it is the smallpox file being found at the New York laboratory that was found, because it's only supposed to be in two different, like, smallpox is only supposed to be stored in two places.
All
in the
right,
whole
save it
world
for the show. Hold on. So the theory basically that I was given to Tad Western sent this to me and said, have you heard about this? About a week and a half ago, Bill Gates apparently warned of a smallpox attack. And so there's this whole thing called Dark Winter. That's going to be the next conspiracy theory that you're going to hear your uncle at Christmas talk about. So you may go look that up. I have no idea. I have no idea about it. I'm not going to talk about it other than that. But yeah, so next week Harry will be hosting the show. I will be getting married. So the reason I don't think it's COVID, Brian, that my brain is slower. It's just the stress. Whoever decided to move twice, plus get COVID, plus have too many jobs, plus get married, plus have a honeymoon. I'm stressed out and ready for a relaxing December.
The whole marriage thing is a part-time job just to start with, and then moving on top of that's another part-time job. So now you've got two full-time jobs going.
I know. We're excited, but we're going down to Panama City with just our immediate families, and the bride added a few to the guest list, but that's okay. And a very small wedding on the beach, and we will be saying I do on the 4th, and we're very excited. And then a week after that, we're going to go to the Dominican Republic. I hope to get out of the DR with my kidneys intact. I don't know about Reagan. I'm not very good at fighting, Tricia, but we'll see. All right, if you want to talk about inflation, you can go to a resort in the Dominican Republic, all-inclusive, meals included, for like $120 a night. But if you want to get a hotel room in the outer ring of Nashville, it's like $200, maybe $150 if you want to stay at a Fleabag motel. So I may not come back from the Dominican if the prices are better. Learn how to fight.
Just stay down there. You could probably afford a podcast down there.
Yes. So in the event of my demise, I've been reminded by Harry to provide the password list to Harry. If I pass away, the We Are Libertarians empire has grown so significantly. We've got the Brian Nichols region. We've got the Boss Hog region. We've got the Harry Discord region. We've got the Tricia Stuart-Mann anarchist plan. We've got the slightly Republican Caleb Franz version. There's so many different kingdoms, and I just ask one thing, Harry, is that when I pass, don't let Jeremiah take over. The Boss Hog cannot inherit the kingdom. He will ruin it like he did the Doughboy and the wind farms in Newcastle, and you cannot let him have it. You've got to fight with everything you have. I know your army is weak, but fight, okay?
My army is not weak. We're just, we just don't like to attack, but we have aligned ourselves with Count Nice, and once he starts on the warpath, I'm just gonna, just let him keep going.
So, should I disregard the contract you sent last week, Harry? Or is that something Chris doesn't?
Are you saying there's a coup while I'm out of the country?
Just in case.
Yeah, it's more of an insurance policy.
Am I getting Mike Pence? Is Kamala are you gonna put me down for a colonoscopy? By the way, Kamala Harris was president for 8 hours and did nothing. Another do-nothing president. She could have changed the system, but did not. All right, let's actually get started today and talk about all the different things that are going on in the news. Harry, this was sort of your suggestion. You wanted to talk about all these different court cases. We've got Ahmaud Aubrey. We've got the Kenosha unrest shooting with Kyle Rittenhouse, Chrystul Kizer. which is what I want to bring up when we talk about Rittenhouse. Ghislaine Maxwell, which was your suggestion, trying to reach out to the Pizza Gators. And then the Waukesha Christmas parade and the bail issue that's gone on there. Where should we start? Why did you want to talk about all these different cases?
I wanted to speak of like the different cases. One, because it's popular news. Like people are talking about these cases. It's and then some people don't have time to watch the trial. They don't have time to sit there and like read any of this. A lot of people who are just, these are even close friends of mine. They're just reading the headlines and just want something, a quick bite. Like
talk about the Aubrey case and what you heard, or the Rittenhouse case and what you heard at Liberty and Chill.
Okay, so like this is a close personal friend. He's completely busy. I will say this. I love him to death, and we just flat out just asked him. I was like, hey, what's going on with what do you know about this? No debate. We're not trying to debate anything. We just want to know what the heck is going on. And he clearly just said, like, I've just been reading headlines, and I just think it's a shame that he got off for, shooting 3 black kids. And it was just, and I'm paraphrasing his sentence, of course, and it just shocked us all at the table. It was like, okay, all right, we're going to have to calmly help our friend. And, but since we have a friendship, a kinship with each other, and we was able to talk through this, not have this roaring debate and yelling at each other, like, okay, here's this stuff like that. Now,
wait, he was yelling at you from a place of ignorance?
No, he was not yelling at a place of ignorance. He did have base opinions on a base of ignorance. And once he realized that he was coming from a place of ignorance, because we even debated about, well, what do we call a good source to know about this article? And we're like, cool, how about the court records? What? We could just pull out everything that was supplied as evidence and the transcript from the court case, because we can actually access all that information because it is public record and people have already gone there, pulled it out, and put it on the internet. So,
yeah, I mean, today I'm just pulling straight from Wikipedia, which has, pretty balanced information on all these different subjects and gives you a breakdown and gives you sources and links. You really just have to go read the Wikipedia page for this stuff. Obviously the issues with media abound, but do we want to start with the media? And, there was very little coverage. I mean, Brian, you kind of followed a lot of this. There seemed to be a tremendous amount of coverage on Rittenhouse, a very small amount of coverage on Aubrey, no coverage of Maxwell, and then the SUV killing, as the Washington Post put it. And none of you have heard of Chrystul Kizer.
No.
So why do we pick and choose? I mean, is it our interest in these different things and the fights that we can have about Rittenhouse and the cultural stamps? Like, why are there disparate media coverages of these kind of trials?
I mean, you look at the Rittenhouse trial and the whole shooting and everything like that. There's a lot of heated debate behind it, because you can get into gun control, you can get into youth being out late at night, you can get into what states have rights for, and just it all wrapped itself up in a really nice package. It was one of the multi-camera, source video that came out almost immediately after it was done. Wasn't held up in somebody's phone or the DA's office for 6 months. And it just immediately caught everyone's attention, especially with the riots going on and everything like that. So everybody had a narrative and understood it. And that's why I think it resonated with the rest of the country. Now, the Aubrey case was completely different because, it took one local releasing.
Well, that nobody knew. I mean, you had heard about it. We had seen it because we're news junkies, but it wasn't until one of the videographer is going to jail for murder.
Yes,
he's the one who
thought it was going to clear himself.
Yeah,
See?
and he sent it to a talk radio station in Georgia to clear his name, and that's what ended up getting him convicted of murder, because it clearly showed what happened. For most
and it
people.
wasn't just that; is that case was completely buried. There was not even a note about it. It was a black man was shot on the street. Period. That was it. Yep. That was all the news that was released by the DA's office. And so one reporter, and I don't remember his name at the moment, started digging into it, and that's where things started to roll a little bit. And this guy should win a Pulitzer, by the way, for what he did, because he went in and started tearing through. Why are we hearing about this? Why don't we have a name released? And then you come to find out that the DA's office was run by a former police officer who was close friends with the guy who was in the back of the truck, the dad, who was a retired police officer. And then you see all of this, how this just slowly started coming out, because oh, wow, we're covering this up as best we can, and it's failing. And it wasn't until the video was released and this guy, and watching him being found guilty, you could just see the little thing in his head. If I don't release that video, I probably get away with it. I mean, that was the little narrative I saw going in his head. If I don't release that video, I'm not standing here. But he releases that video, and the whole country is aghast because, once again, it's a silly, thoughtless crime of chasing somebody down, and amazingly bad things happen when weapons are involved. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. You know, people have a right to defend themselves, but you don't have a right to take somebody's life because you think they stole something, even if there is a crappy law, which, by the way, the one thing I want to say is how amazingly quick Georgia changed that law, the citizens arrest law, very quickly, just boom, done. And obviously you have to charge them with the law, what it was at the time. But it was amazing to watch how fast that just did a 180, and that captured everybody's attention, and them scheduling at the same time as the Rittenhouse trial. You know, you can get into court.
So let me fill in some of the facts before we move on the Aubrey trial. Excuse me. So on February 23rd, and this I think shaded a lot of the view of the Rittenhouse stuff too, because it was just such an outrageous killing. It was down in Brunswick and Glenn County, Georgia. Aubrey had been pursued by 3 white residents, Travis McMichael and his father Gregory, who were armed and in one vehicle, and William Roddy Brian. Is it Roddy Brian? Roddy or Roddy? Yeah. Roddy, okay. Who was in another vehicle and recorded the pursuit and shooting on his cell phone. After Travis exited his vehicle and wielded a shotgun, Travis and Aubrey engaged in a physical confrontation, during which Travis shot Aubrey. Police interviewed transcripts detailed that Gregory initiated the chase after seeing Aubrey running past his house, suspecting that Aubrey had committed burglary or theft in Satilla Shores. But no evidence has emerged of Aubrey doing so. And there were a lot of conservatives at the time, for all the people saying, oh, the left-wing media and all the lies about Rittenhouse, there was plenty on the conservative media side smearing Aubrey as a burglar. According to the police testimony, Brian told the police that he saw the chase and joined in independently, but was not sure if Aubrey had done anything wrong. Aubrey had entered an under-construction house with no doors 5 times in 5 months, including once shortly before the shooting. Security camera video from inside the house showed no evidence of theft. The Glenn County Police Department said the Brunswick District Attorney's Office advised them on February 23rd to make no arrests, while the Brunswick District Attorney's Office denied that its top office holders gave such advice. Waycross District Attorney George Barnhill twice advised the GCPD to make no arrests, and once on February 24th before he was assigned to the case on February 27th, and a second time on April 2nd while announcing his intention to recuse himself from the case due to connections between his son and Gregory McMichael. Barnhill requested recusal on April 7th, and sent to the Atlantic District Attorney's Office on April 13th. At the behest of Gregory McMichael, a local attorney provided a copy of the video of the shooting to local radio station WGIG, who posted it on their website May 5th. The video went viral, having also been posted to YouTube and Twitter. Within hours, the Atlantic District Attorney Tom Durden said a grand jury would decide whether charges would be brought, and accepted an offer from Georgia Governor Brian Kemp to have the Georgia Bureau of Investigation investigate the case. The Bureau of Investigation arrested the McMichaels on May 7th and Brian on May 21st, charging them in felony murder and other crimes. Meanwhile, the case was ultimately transferred to the Cobb County District Attorney's Office. Additional evidence was presented by the prosecutors to support the murder charges, including a statement to the GBI by Brian, the videographer, that Travis said effing N-word as Aubrey was laying dying. On June 24th, 2020, a grand jury indicted each of the 3 men on charges of malice murder, felony murder, and other crimes, and the 3 men later went on trial in November 2021. On the charge of malice murder, they only convicted Travis McMichael. For the other charges, the jury convicted all 3 men of the felony murder, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. All 3 convicted now face a mandatory life sentence of imprisonment, with the judge yet to decide on the possibility of parole. The FBI got involved. I believe that there have been some charges brought against some of the prosecutors in their just blatant not handling of the case. So those are some of the details that took place. Some of that we knew at the time. I mean, I think because it had percolated in independent media from February until May, you had a little bit more information than the immediacy of what happened in the Kyle Rittenhouse situation in August of that year. And I think that plays a part in that we had a little bit more clear information, Harry.
Right. The Rittenhouse stuff was just like most of that was the people there on the ground was releasing information out quickly. Everyone was getting things on YouTube because the thing is with that one, those riots was streamed for the days. That was several days leading up to this. The Aubrey one, this is more of something that just this thing happened and then it was buried. And that's the other thing. Some of the disgust in the Rittenhouse trial was some bleed over from Aubrey because they're like, well, he murdered these people and they just leave them out. And I'm like, whoa. Rittenhouse turned himself in and was sitting in prison for 60 days. These guys did this and the police didn't arrest him or anything. They eventually went to got him. If you look at the timeline details that Chris just read out, like after they did this, they were out walking free for 45 days before it really got out. Yeah.
I mean, whereas Rittenhouse sat in jail while his attorney Lynn Wood fundraised on him. We'll have to get to that. I mean, if you ever needed evidence that the election wasn't stolen, that Lynn Wood is a piece of crap.
Right.
His client said on Tucker Carlson that he's a piece of crap. So, Tricia, what are some of your thoughts about the media and Rittenhouse and Aubrey and some of these other trials?
So I think, as Brian touched on, as far as the Rittenhouse, there are things like just in social media where the algorithm did make for a better show. So it did touch on the riots, gun control, lots of different things that were happening in the country. So it piqued everybody's interest. But with Aubrey, which is something I followed much more closely than Rittenhouse, two things really struck me. Number one, the fact that the defense was that law, which actually has been repealed in Georgia, citizen's arrest. And it just the only reason the defense used that was because the best thing they could come up with. Never, if you watch the case, was it ever talked about during, the pursuit on the video. Travis admitted that he never had done, had said that you're under arrest, anything like that. And when they spoke to the police and were ultimately let go immediately, that never came up either. So obviously it was just something that the defense brought up, which I was glad that came through because there was part of me that was worried that they might be able to get off on that. The second thing is, and I suppose it's just something I was thinking about watching defense. The way he spoke reminded me of some kind of 1950s segregation movie. Yeah. And I had to wonder if...
You broke up there. Who are you talking about?
So I was talking about the defense attorney in the Aubrey case. The way he spoke to the jury was, I would be offended if I was on that jury. Like, he's dirty, he's gross. And there was just lots of like...
What was the long toenail? I mean, which was just straight out of a Sambo cartoon.
And dirty he said with his long legs and dirty toenails when he was walking around there. But there was other words that weren't quite as disgusting as that I just thought, why would you try to identify with these people? Obviously, it was a mostly white jury, which also made me nervous because if he thought that might, work on them, maybe it would.
Yeah, I gotta stick up for my friends down in Georgia. I mean, I saw widely, on conservative podcasts that talked about this, liberal. It's just a mostly white jury in Georgia. Of course, those racists down there are going to let him off. And that kind of smacks of like 1950s bigotry too. Like assuming that all white people in Georgia who are going to let murderers off. I get why people kind of think that, but it's kind of struck me as a bad analysis.
There's one more thing though. If I could can you imagine this scenario? If say it was a white guy jogging through maybe an urban, mostly black neighborhood, and a bunch of black guys in a truck had a gun, said, called him a, pejorative or whatever for a white person,
a clear person.
And then, do you think that the police would have let them go if they would have explained, we think this guy's been, committing crimes in the neighborhood? I do not think that would have happened.
Yeah, Harry, go ahead.
Oh, so it's like one thing I was going to add is like, because anyone who like follows anything about like the South understands that the South has kicked out most of the racists. All the racists have moved into the Pacific Northwest. Fight me on that. Fight me.
They're in Idaho.
I'll tell you. In yes, Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. The rural part is there. Fight me. I'll show you. I got the documents. I got the receipts.
Just beware. Anybody walking around Washington that looks like this, be careful.
Part of the Bundy militia, right?
Yeah.
But, the funny thing is this: in the Aubrey trial, they kept the defense kept on excusing black jurors, and the judge called it out. He said, "I can't stop them legally. They're coming up with other reasons." But it's pretty obvious. So, yeah, it was pretty terrible how this was set up. But they had to have, this was a well-funded case. This was a well-funded defense. This wasn't just two yokels down the street picking it up. So they had to have some sort of evidence that, from the jurors that were picked and stuff like that, that if they went old school 1950s, To Kill a Mockingbird type of thing, that they were going to go ahead and get at least a hung jury. And I think that was probably what they were hoping for, is a hung jury, then they can go back and plead it out. But no, in this case, it was pretty self-evident that justice came through, and relatively quickly, too, with all the charges involved.
Yeah, a jury of white women, white women gave, in Atlanta, gave the presidency to Joe Biden. There has to be some acknowledgement that that it is not a blanket racist state, but there is also guys like this defense attorney who, wanted to kick Al Sharpton out of the courtroom because he might bias the jury. It was just, I agree with Tricia. He was blatantly playing some of those stereotypes. Just wanted to take a minute to pause here and thank everybody that supports the show, especially our patrons who are members of WAL Plus, WAL Plus. They're the ones that make the We Are Libertarian Podcast Network possible, and especially our $100 a month members, John Pusilo, Casey Feldposh, Lars Nordskog, Jake Edel, Matthew Durbin, Rhinehold, Christy Avery, and Jason Doolittle. Thank you to all of our patrons. Please support our advertisers. All of this content is free for you, but it does cost us money, and we are dirty, rotten pig capitalists. So please join wallplus.com and become a member of Wall Plus, and you don't have to listen to these commercials if you join, and you get all the archives. It's fantastic. It's amazing. So go join wallplus.com or look up on Patreon, the We Are Libertarians Podcast Network. And we will be right back with the rest of this conversation after the other side of these messages. And Rhinehold, do you want to weigh in here on Aubrey? I guess we're on Aubrey fully here, but go ahead.
You kind of brought up the question of why there might have been a disparity between the coverage between some of these cases. And the simple fact is that you got a lot of coverage on the cases that were clearly able to divide people along political lines. There are people who are invested in this, who want to create division.
There's also a question. There was also a question with the Rittenhouse stuff. This Aubrey case was clear from the beginning.
Clear cut, the Rittenhouse case was not clear cut, not open and shut. There were a lot of issues legally that had to be dealt with, and the jury figured out, listened to the evidence, and they came to their conclusion. Aubrey case was. We talk about it being pretty obvious, clear cut, but I remember when they first arrested the guys that there were people on libertarian boards were telling me that all these guys are going to get off because they didn't do anything wrong.
Vigilantism is okay. It was clearly self-defense.
Self-defense, yeah.
Right. Self-defense, yeah. When you were trying to chase him down with the truck and then get out with your shotgun pointed at him.
He reached for his gun.
Yeah, so let's give a little more information here on exactly what happened in the moments. Kind of take it down to the zoom down into the moment here. So the video recorded by Brian using his cell phone shows he follows Aubrey jogging down the neighborhood road. He's on the left side of the road when he encounters a white pickup truck that had stopped in the right lane. Gregory McMichael is standing in the truck bed while Travis stands behind the driver's door with a shotgun. Brian's vehicle comes to a stop behind Aubrey and the pickup truck. As Aubrey approaches the pickup truck, shouting can be heard. Aubrey then crosses from the left side of the road to the right side of the road and runs around the passenger side of the truck. After passing the truck's front, Aubrey turns left. Meanwhile, Travis is holding a shotgun, approaches Aubrey at the trunk's front. The confrontation between Aubrey and Travis is momentarily blocked. Several moments of the video report that the audio of the first gunshot seems to be heard before Aubrey and Travis struggle with each other. Some media accounts first reported a struggle and then the mentions of the gunshot, but that was not true. Other media accounts described that it was not possible to see from the video what was happening when the first gunshot was fired, or report that the truck blocks the view of how the men first engage each other with regard to the gunshot. That I don't think was true either. Travis and Aubrey were seen to grapple over the shotgun. While struggling, both men disappear off camera view of the left side of the frame, after which the audio of a second gunshot is heard. When they reappear, Aubrey throws punches and tries to grab the shotgun. A third gunshot is being fired by Travis at point-blank range as Aubrey appears to throw a right-handed punch at his head. Aubrey recoils, stumbles, and collapses face down in the middle of the road while Travis walks away. Gregory McMichael, who was taken out a shotgun but has not fired, runs toward his son and Aubrey. So, what led to that moment? There was, in December 2019 and January 2020, residents of Satilla Shores had reported 3 break-ins or thefts. A Satilla Shores resident reported rifles stolen. On February 11, 2020, Travis called 911 to report a slender 6-foot-tall black man with short hair, wearing red shorts and a white shirt, who was trespassing on the site of a house under construction. He said, "I've never seen this guy in the neighborhood." The dispatcher asked whether Travis was okay, and he said, "Yeah, it just startled me. When I turned around and saw him and backed up, he reached into his pocket and ran into the house, so I don't know if he's armed or not. But he looks like he was acting like he was. We've been having a lot of burglaries and break-ins around here lately," Travis said on the call. His father, Gregory, was one of the people out searching that night, and Gregory, at least one other neighbor, were armed. Police responded. They searched the house along with the neighbor and found no one. However, a surveillance video from that evening showed a man who looked like Aubrey briefly walking in and out of the house. Certainly not a crime. We grew up in a neighborhood that was being built. My family and I often walked around to snoop in those houses and see the progress. So there's cameras across the street, and they basically see him jogging. I mean, Aubrey was out jogging and was curious, but to the McMichaels, he was the guy who was the robber, and it was up to them to play cop and go out and arrest the man who was running down the street. So in a second call beginning at 1:14, the male caller said, "I'm out here at Satilla Shores. There's a black male running down the street." The 911 dispatcher asked, "Where at Satilla Shores?" The caller replied, "I don't know what street we're on." "Stop, watch that. Stop, damn it, stop." So he's trying to basically citizens arrest him. So McMichael said he was a witness when the cops showed up. And they basically were out playing vigilante, trying to stop a person that they thought was the robber, and they assumed that it was Aubrey. So they put themselves into a situation where they were armed. The person that they thought, I mean, from Aubrey's perspective, he's being chased by 2 guys in a truck. You're in Georgia. You're black being chased by 2 white guys that are armed. I defended Georgia, but there's also not a defense for Georgia and their history. And so he's assumed to be guilty by these vigilantes who are trying to citizens arrest him. And he's running from them, and then finally turns back to try and fight when he knows he's going to be overtaken. And this doesn't strike me as self-defense. So, Harry, we'll start with you. What is self-defense? Because Rittenhouse, the Kizer case, and this case that we will be talking about today, these are self-defense cases. So let's define what self-defense is.
All right. First off, Aubrey case is Aubrey was acting in self-defense. Okay,
right.
All right. He was acting in self-defense.
You don't get to create the situation where you have to defend yourself. Like
Correct,
if your
yeah.
intent is to go and like show up with a gun and put it in somebody's face and then they try to take your gun or shoot you back, you've created the situation. I mean,
self-defense. Yeah, self-defense is like you're sitting there, you're minding your, you're basically not provoking, you're not, being aggressive. You are simply, you have the privilege of be able to claim self-defense. Now, if you're provoking, shoving, pushing, getting into other people's faces, you are causing provocation. You're becoming a provocateur. You're like, you're trying to like, you're making the situation happen. I used to see the situation a lot when I was doing MMA, and these MMA guys would go around into bars basically provoking.
You mean like a guy running around yelling the N-word and shoot me at a guy with an AR-15?
Right. Yeah. Doing stuff like that, you can almost, lose the privilege of self-defense. And that's what like this whole thing is not to say like just like the racist connotation of just being chased down by somebody in trucks. I'm just like, usually being chased down in the truck. This could be a rival gang. This could be anything, shoot, like, it could have just been like as we get ready to talk about the Maxwell, this could have been sex traffickers, human traffickers. I would be booking it too, get the heck out of there.
It doesn't matter how well trained you are in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, like our friend Remzo Martinez, Tricia, if you're being chased down by men in a truck, and they're yelling, stop, stop, and they've got shotguns, and they're, like, acting like... I mean, there isn't anybody who's going to fear for their life in that moment.
I think it's really strange that it was assumed, and some people, like Dennis said in the beginning, it was assumed that he should stop and give them time. If there's people chasing you, and you're afraid for your life, you don't have to stop. I wouldn't. If a bunch of men were chasing me, I would not stop. Now, I would be armed. And which goes to, I wonder if, Aubrey had been armed, if this whole thing would have been different, which he had every right to be. But it's just a weird idea that you just have to stop for some people with a gun in a truck that are chasing you when you're on foot. It's weird.
I mean, the question that I was going to ask that was really insightful and smart to Brian has escaped me. And he's taking a phone call anyways. So, Rhinehold, you're shaking your head through all of this. What do you want to say?
No, you just made some comments about another case, and they're kind of not exactly accurate. So
we'll take your trash takes here in a moment. Rhinehold is sad that he missed the Rittenhouse discussion last week, and he's hiding his thoughts from the group because we all disagree with him, we think, but he won't say because he doesn't want to be outcast, and we're not going to cast you out for having bad opinions. It's the shirts that you wear that we can't take. Actually,
so abusive.
What's wrong with red?
I know. I love
pretty
Dennis.
basic color.
Damn communist.
I like your red commie shirt.
Christmassy.
It is actually very festive with your green screen and your red shirt.
Man, use green screen. Yeah.
Dennis, like what in terms of self-defense, what is like, how do you view self-defense? Like, when is it appropriate? When can you engage in it?
Well, there's a couple things we need to discuss first. Are we talking about the legal definition of self-defense or what we think it should be? Because every state has its own little rules around what self-defense is, when you can use it, when you can use deadly force, when you can't use deadly force. They have a thing. A lot of states have proportionality laws that you have to only respond in proportional. You can't do deadly force if you're not being attacked with deadly force.
Right. Like you come up and it looks like you're going to hit me and punch me in the face. I can't blow your face off. Right. Right, Harry?
Usually right.
No, it depends on which state you're in.
Yeah.
And situation. Because if you show up with 5 dudes and punch me in the face, I can start blasting.
It's the self-defense is convincing a jury that you have a rational belief that your life is in danger, right? So the question then becomes, what causes that? And there's all kinds of other things too, especially with Wisconsin. There were a lot of little, there were exceptions to exceptions to exceptions to exceptions inside of that law that were on trial. So it wasn't, like I said, as clear cut as a lot of people wanted it to be. And that's based because most people wanted it to be clear cut one way or the other.
I forget the term that they used in the Rittenhouse trial, but the prosecution was basically saying, like, if you are a chaos voyeur, or what was the phrase that maybe one of you guys know? It basically, like, you were a chaos tourist, I think was what this, something involved tourism. Rittenhouse showed up, and then he was armed by his friend. He was there as a tourist. You can't claim self-defense if you're in a dangerous environment with a weapon. Bad things can happen, so therefore it wasn't self-defense.
No, the thing is that did he create any of those incidents? Did he create the dangers? And when you walk around, when he was there just defending the property, everything was fine. It's when he left the property and started walking around blocks away, and he was pointing his gun at people, which, you're not supposed to do. Now, he said he was doing it as a joke, but I think anybody who knows anything about guns knows that you don't point your gun at people unless you mean to kill them, and it can provoke a response. You joked about the guy who said, the N-word at the guy with the AR-15. The reason why he said that was because the guy with the AR-15 had pointed his gun at a girl, and he stepped in between them and started cussing the guy out, saying, "You want to shoot somebody, shoot me," and then calling him the N-word and all kinds of other stuff because he was mad. Those are things that came out in the trial that a lot of people probably don't know about, but all these things were trying to paint people certain ways. And the real problem was, and I'll say this now, is that the real problem with what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse is that he was enticed there because of the political environment in this country where we want to kill each other.
Yeah. And
it's getting ridiculous.
The fact that he's, there's, Tricia, like, hero worship around someone who killed a commie, and, we all see it on our feeds because we're all libertarians. Like, at some point, the political environment did, factor into his decision-making. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Dennis on the point that he put himself into a situation. I believe it was self-defense because I believe at that time he was being chased by somebody who clearly would like to have killed him, and he shot him. And I think he was able to do that. However, he's not a hero. And I was wondering, just not a big fan of, people that worship the police. And he was one of those types, but he still was entitled to self-defense, even if he's a cop lover. But I wonder if the right who used him and lionized him and made him a hero.
Basically, we're predators using a child for their own political
What if he was an SJW type and happened to be there, and who knows?
And like BLM.
Did you see all the nationalistic conservatives losing their mind on Twitter over him saying he likes BLM, which was hilarious. This country is so effed.
Yeah, that was funny.
Which is fine to like BLM the movement and not BLM the organization, because the BLM organization doesn't care about Black lives. Screw the BLM organization.
They care about putting. The leader tweeted that you're enjoying your meal on stolen land, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then just right after that put up a fence around her $1.4 million compound up in L.A.
Brian, you had some objections. I could see it on your face to what Rhinehold was saying.
Number one, there was no real evidence pointed in the trial introduced by the DA. That Kyle had pointed the gun, except for potato quality zoomed in video.
Except his admission to doing so.
He laughed. Dennis, the comment he made was somebody had accused him of pointing the gun at somebody. He said, "Yeah, sure." Now we can get into whether he's admitting guilt or whether he's going ahead and saying, "Yeah, sure." Like, somebody accused you. "Hey, I thought I saw you step on a chicken's head over there." Yeah, sure, whatever. So if he throws whatever in there, we can defend that. But
there's video that he pointed his gun at Rosenbaum. All Rosenbaum was
the video. I watched that video.
Several dozen yards away from him. He raised his gun, pointed it, dropped, and started to run. Yeah. When he pointed that gun, he was creating an incident that could be considered provocative.
One of the reasons I love Rhinehold.
Now, that's a judgment call. That's what I'm saying now, is that it's a judgment call that a jury needs to decide after watching all the evidence. It's not clear cut. It is not black and white. There's a Supreme Court decision in Wisconsin, a Wisconsin Supreme Court decision that states if if one points a loaded weapon at another and the other grapples with him to prevent the shooting and is shot, it is murder.
From 1886.
Yes, it's 1886. The laws have been changed, though. I'm just saying that's still on the books. There's still that precedent inside the laws that have to be considered when they're doing this. It is easy for us to sit here and just go, oh, it should be this or it should be that. It should be easy to determine. But the people on the jury have to sit and listen to all this and make a decision that's going to affect people's lives. And they have to make the reasonable decision, and the laws are not as clear cut as a lot of people try to make it to be. It's just not. You can't be with self-defense because you're dealing with taking individual people's lives. And what really bites my ass with all of this are the people who are like glad that these people got shot because they were terrible people. And it's like a lot of people that I hear saying this are supposedly great Christians. You know, on the Christian monarchy movement inside the Libertarian movement, right? They're just saying they're glad he's dead because of this and that. I said, we're supposed to be giving grace to people. We're supposed to be trying to give a chance for people to do better in their lives. Kyle didn't know who those people were or what they were. He had no concept
of Rosenbaum's past.
It's all people wanting to kill each other these days. And we shouldn't be easily allowing people to kill other people without questioning it. What was the kill shot on Rosenbaum? He was shot 4 times. Which one was the kill shot?
In 1 second, Dennis. He was shot 4 times.
Here, hold on. Let's watch the video.
I'm not saying that you're wrong. What I'm saying is that there's a question there. You shot him in the back. That's what killed him, right? It's not clear cut and easy to determine.
Let's watch the drone video of that particular moment, because the drone video, I think, is telling, because you can have, when it comes to Rittenhouse, there's like 2 conversations going on. There is the conversation that is the whole package, and then, you know, of why he was there. Did his dad live in Kenosha? Why did he cross state lines? Where did he get the gun? What did his mom drive? Like all that stuff that's kind of irrelevant in terms of the trial. And then there's the specific moment of the killings. I won't say murder because that implies intent. And there's drone footage of the Rosenbaum, and I'll describe this for our audio listeners, but we're watching it on YouTube. There are a lot of independent journalists on the ground and taking footage. And this drone video, Tad Western told me it came from the FBI, but it came from... It did?
Yeah, that was FBI released video. Now, it was done by a private actor, but it was released to the FBI, and it was only given to the FBI. The defense attorney tried to get this video and was refused it by the drone owner, and the FBI had control over it, and they gave it to the DA's office just at the beginning of the trial.
Okay, well, Tad also told me that FBI agents were on the ground directing people where to burn things, so that's why I was skeptical of that. So you see Rittenhouse in the parking lot. Where was the first shooting with Rosenbaum over here chasing him? Was this at the car lot or the gas station?
This is the car lot area, I believe. Now, what's going to end up happening here? This is the video. I think Rosenbaum at this point has thrown the bag at him, which honestly with the light looked like a Molotov at first, but it was a bag.
Right.
I think it was his bag of stuff. And there he is right there closing the distance. But hang on, Chris, I want to say one thing. The evidence that he pointed the gun, if you back that up just a second, you see the light way back there up the street, and it looks like this may be the gas station. But the point is that they said that it was clear, and here he is pointing it out, that Rittenhouse pointed his weapon at Rosenbaum back further, not when he's right here, because he's already being chased. And you can see him pointing there because he was already being chased. He said that he pointed way back in the back. Back, you can see where he's pointing. That's where he said that he pointed at him, and that's what started the chase.
Okay.
Right. And Rosenbaum was supposed to know that he wasn't being pointed at.
But the thing is that Dennis, that there's no other evidence in trial, and you're talking about maybe 10, 12 pixels. And if anything, that the defense attorney said that he's right-handed. The way that the Kyle apparently would have had to point the gun at Rosenbaum was that he was left-handed. Now, he could have. Everybody knows how to shoot, knows how to shoot either way, but he points the gun here, but he's being chased by Rosenbaum at this point. Rittenhouse is being chased by Rosenbaum at this point, and he's not stopping. So, the Wisconsin law is pretty clear that you have to, that even if you commit a crime, if you go ahead and break into somebody's house and you've threatened them and committed a felony, if you're running away, they don't have the right to shoot you in the back. And if they come at you, you do have a right to defend yourself. That's in Wisconsin law, and that was the code that was looked at the time.
And there's other things in that Wisconsin law that is not being brought up. That if you're the provocateur, and if they can prove that you're a provocateur, you have to then, because normally you don't have to give way, right? You have you have a duty to flee,
which is what he's doing. I think running through a parking lot with a crazy guy chasing him,
and he stops and turns instead of continuing on.
He's a bag is thrown at him. I just replayed it a bunch of times. A bag is thrown. He turns around. He then continues, and then when he is almost overtaken by a guy was he saying he was going to grab the gun or had reached for the gun? He turns around, points his gun. The reason Rosenbaum shot in the back is because of the firing of the 4 shots turn him around. The kill shot was in the back because it's like the Kennedy assassination, with your body
at
turns.
At that point during that 4th shot, when he was shot in the back, he was not a threat.
Okay, are you talking about 1 second? What are you talking about?
I understand, Brian. I'm not saying that he was wrong to do so. I'm just saying
what kind of logic? Well, you just shoot three shots. He's neutralized, and then he did that later, so he had the capability when he blew up the guy's bicep.
Exactly. Kyle not looking at the health gauge of that
Why
boss.
didn't he stop and help for medical treatment for the guy?
Well, he stopped. He called the guy. Said, "I just shot."
Because
somebody.
He had other people chasing him. He runs down the street. There had been this all started with a gunshot in the air. Let's fill in some details for those who may not be.
He's also under no obligation to render health aid. It's great that he does, but he could have cracked a cold one on that cold going down body.
No.
All right, so Kyle.
It's Miller time. No.
August 25th, Kyle Rittenhouse, a 17-year-old from Antioch, Illinois, fatally shot 2 men and wounded another in Kenosha, Wisconsin during the protest riots and civil unrest that followed the shooting of a black man named Jacob Blake by a white police officer. Is it true or not, Brian, that his dad lived in Kenosha and that is part of why he felt the compelled to defend Kenosha?
His dad lived in Kenosha. I believe a good chunk of his family lived in Kenosha. His mom lived in Antioch. And this is one of those things, again, where if you live near a state line and there's a bigger town kind of close by, you kind of go to a bigger town. So he was no longer working at the YMCA in Antioch because they were closed for COVID. So he was doing some work up in Kenosha with his family. So it's one of those things that you can make oh my goodness, he crossed a state line. But if you live in a border town, that's like going to the store across the street. Big deal. Or sometimes the taxes are better. It doesn't matter they cross the state line. Libertarians should love the fact that I can cross state lines. Yeah, you have to follow local law, but he had every right to be there, just as everybody else did.
So Rittenhouse was armed with the semi-automatic AR-15 that he took from his friend Dominic Black. Both Rittenhouse and Black joined a group of armed men who said they were in Kenosha to protect businesses. Rittenhouse said that he was there to protect a car dealership from being vandalized and to provide medical aid. The car dealership said they did not invite them on the stand. There is a significant amount of witnesses that say that is not true. After an earlier confrontation with Kenosha resident Joseph Rosenbaum, who was unarmed, Rittenhouse was followed by Rosenbaum and journalist Richard McGinnis. Racine resident Joshua Zeminski fired a shot into the air nearby. Then Rittenhouse turned towards Rosenbaum. McGinnis later stated that Rosenbaum had lunged at Rittenhouse and tried to take his rifle, after which Rittenhouse shot Rosenbaum 4 times at close range, killing him. Rittenhouse then ran down the street while being pursued by a crowd of at least a dozen people. After a man hit him in the head, Rittenhouse tripped and fell to the ground. He was kicked by another man. Rittenhouse fired twice from the ground and missed. Silver Lake resident Anthony Huber then struck him in the shoulder with a skateboard and attempted to take his rifle. Rittenhouse shot Huber once in the chest, killing him. West Allis resident Gage Grosenkreutz then approached Rittenhouse and pointed a handgun at him, at which time Rittenhouse wounded Grosenkreutz by shooting him once in the right arm. Rittenhouse was charged with 2 counts of homicide, 1 count of attempted homicide, 2 counts of reckless endangerment, 1 count of unlawful possession of a firearm, and 1 count of curfew violation. Rittenhouse's trial took place from November 1st to the 19th, 2021. Judge Bruce Schroeder dismissed the unlawful possession of a charge and curfew violation charge during the trial, and a unanimous jury found Rittenhouse not guilty of the remaining charges. An interesting note is that an Economist YouGov poll conducted during the trial found that 2/3 of Republicans thought that Rittenhouse should be acquitted, while 3/4 of Democrats thought he should have been convicted. And you can read, if you want even more depth and details on both of these cases, again, the Wikipedia articles are very deep and full of lots of links and information.
The one thing I do ask this question, and let's talk self-defense, let's talk provocation, everything else. Gage had his gun in his hand. He went and reached for it. If he takes 2 steps back, unloads into Kyle, killing Kyle on the ground, okay? If he does that, is he justified in doing so?
I think you can make an argument that Huber and these guys who were trying to disarm Rittenhouse after shooting somebody, you could make an argument that they viewed it as self-defense. Could you not?
Yeah, at that point, both sides have a right to self-defense.
Nope. Well, we'll get on that. There's one other thing I want to point out. There's another person that's standing behind Gage when he gets his bicep shot, and he's got his hands up. Now, if Kyle's on Madman Patrol, this guy is about 15 feet away from Kyle. He's got his hands up, and basically Kyle doesn't shoot him. So, I mean, you show him when Gage had his hands up, Kyle had his gun pointed at him. It's when he looked around, reached for his gun, and started to point it towards Kyle that Kyle shot him. At that point, does Kyle still have self-defense involved?
As I said, both sides of that incident had self-defense rights.
But how does Gage have it if he wasn't attacked?
Because there's a guy with a gun trying to shoot people. He had just shot somebody. He's trying to disarm him.
That sounds awful vigilante to me, but maybe that's just me.
But I guess when libertarians talk about the good guy with the gun, we were all just lying and saying bullshit then, aren't we?
No, we're not, because, so
an active shooter just killed somebody. Right. He's going to try and neutralize the threat. He was a threat at that point.
What Dennis is saying, if it was the first shot, it would be different, but this would have been after there was already a shooting. Yeah,
I think if Gage had been standing next to Rosenbaum when he was shot and saw that, you'd be 100% correct, Dennis. You would be. But this is 2 minutes later down the road chasing the guy. And so at that point, he's disengaged from the initial melee.
He's still a threat. Everybody knows he had just killed somebody. He could be going and trying to kill other people. You don't know what's going on. He's still got his gun raised,
but
not pointed at anybody at that point, but he's still got it in his hands. And he's doing the right thing. He's in self-defense mode at that point. See, it doesn't have to be one side or the other on this crap.
We did that. Right? No. Stop. He said on the trial that he had no idea he shot this other person. They just saw him running. That's why they went after him. Yeah.
Because people were saying he just shot this guy.
So
that's what the people were saying.
Chase down this guy.
He's just shot somebody.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is that if somebody says, I just saw this guy kill somebody, let's go get him? That sounds like a mob action to me. That doesn't sound like justice. That doesn't sound like anything. It sounds like a mob chasing some kid down the street.
Mm-hmm. And what if the kid? The next time the good guy with the gun stops somebody from doing a shooting, like a school shooting or something, if they're not actively shooting somebody at that point, they can't do anything. That's
he said shooting, not shitting.
But it just shows also the complication of using your weapon to defend yourself in an active shooter position. You just can't just shoot somebody or attack somebody just because you heard gunshots and you see someone out with a weapon. If you did do that, you would also still be in the wrong.
The things that he's disengaged
It's judgment
from.
calls.
It's,
All of
right,
these
it's a
are
judgment call.
Correct.
What I've always
But
said.
we're telling
is
you that
all
your judgment might be a
calls.
little askew
He
here.
didn't shoot him when he threw
I'm the wrong one. I got it.
He
You
didn't.
guys think that it's clear cut, and I'm the wrong one because I'm questioning.
Well, there's
Rhinehold.
there's plenty of people in the comments
Rhinehold, love the question.
who agree with you.
Yeah, There. Okay,
Well, I
here's
got
the
one
thing.
guy in the chat who won't even spell my name right, who's calling me a liberal. So I mean,
Well, that's
it's just the way it goes.
Just want you to be
I
on
know
your
what
own
I'm going to
terms,
get
that's
here. Question the things.
malice fans gonna malice.
The worst thing about the trial was the prosecutor. Because if he did, like, if Rittenhouse didn't have $2 million, that dude, if he had a public defender, dude's in jail.
Yeah,
Dude would be sitting in jail right now.
Done.
Okay, no, should have went to trial. Yeah, should have been like that, and the prosecutor shouldn't have acted like this and did this because public defender.
Well,
Rittenhouse
prosecutor should have asked for a right type of charge. What he asked for was overreaching, and he should never have asked for that.
Right.
If he had asked
He
for
should also know the law.
reckless endangerment, he probably had a chance.
Before we move on to, does any libertarian want to take Dion's comment here? How did he have the right to be there if he was out past curfew? Tricia?
Personally, I believe that curfew laws are victimless law. There's a victimless crime if you commit that law. So anybody had the right to be out if they weren't aggressing on somebody or their property. However, there is a point that Dion makes here. There were a lot of people that had curfew charges, other small charges that didn't destroy property that were out at this. So perhaps they should have just, drove there with an AR and walked around, and then they wouldn't have any charges. So, Kyle Rittenhouse, I believe, did commit self-defense. I do not believe it was murder. However, there's a lot of people that had to pay petty crimes and got charged with things that night, and they didn't kill anybody, self-defense or not. So I think it's very disproportionate sometimes the way other people are charged. Like, it was a lot of homeless teenagers and things like that. So, we could charge them and they'll have maybe a public defender or just pay a fine. But,
so we
have a big fancy trial. He walks away with no charges.
This brings us to a case of disproportionate. Who's talking? Is that Harry?
It was me. I'm like, yeah. Well, yeah, he can you can be outside per curfew and still get self-defense. Just like if you can cross the imaginary line of the United States, come inside the country, supposedly illegal, even though it's an imaginary line, and still claim self-defense because someone tries to rape and or attack you when you make it into Texas. Yeah,
you won't hear many libertarians making the argument that he crossed state lines because we don't believe in lines.
And he can own a gun.
Correct. And curfew
or
and
borrow it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Now, the Chrystul Kizer case is in Kenosha, Washington, and it points out a lot of the imbalances and disparities that many of us who want criminal justice reform and a more fair and equitable criminal justice system, this points out a lot of it. So at 17, Chrystul Kizer was arrested for the alleged murder of Randall Philip Volar III, claiming sex trafficking and abuse. During her arrest, she claimed he was her pimp. On June 5th, 2018, she has not gone to trial. Her case date has not been set. So less than a year, a little over a year, Kyle Rittenhouse has already gotten his wrapped up. And she spent a significant amount of time in jail. She shot him twice, set his house on fire, and then stole his car. Kizer was arrested and incarcerated at Kenosha County Detention Facility to await trial. Kenosha County prosecutors charged her with first-degree intentional homicide, use of a dangerous weapon, and 4 other felonies. They contend the murder was premeditated. If convicted, she would face a mandatory life sentence in prison. Her lawyer claims she was a child trafficking victim acting in self-defense against her pimp. Her case received renewed notoriety on December 19th after the Washington Post interviewed her after the George Floyd protests. Community activists posted her $400,000 bond, and she was released in June 2020. You compare that to the bond that was set in the Waukesha County case, where the man who just drove an SUV into a crowd of 5 people had a bond set at $1,000. So the trial date is not set. Now, The details, like in the other two cases that we've discussed today, matter in what describes self-defense, and we'll unpack this after we give you some of these details. Volar was a 34-year-old man, and they met on Backpage when she was 16. She posted to the site after a referral from a girl she knew and stated she needed money for food and school notebooks. He was the first person to contact her when she joined the site. She lived with him and alleged that he sexually abused her regularly and sometimes filmed the abuse for over a year. Kizer alleged that he began trafficking her using Backpage and took the money that she was paid, meaning he prostituted her through the website, if you don't understand the updated language of trafficking. Volar was previously arrested in 2017 after a 15-year-old black girl reported him to the police for giving her drugs and threatening to kill her. He was charged with child enticement using a computer to facilitate a child sex crime and a second-degree sexual assault of a child. Volar was released the same day, and he had to pay no bail and was told he would receive a court summons. The Post reported that court records demonstrated that the police had evidence that Volar was abusing multiple underage black girls, and there was video evidence of the abuse. Records also showed that the prosecutor's office received the evidence 12 days before Volar was killed and 3 months after his arrest. It is not uncommon for those who commit sexual and domestic abuse get out on no bail, which leaves their victims incredibly vulnerable because they are now facing consequences, and narcissistic abusers tend to really hate that. Kizer killed Volar on June 5, 2018 by shooting him in the head. Kizer admitted to taking an Uber from Milwaukee to the deceased residence, shooting him because she had gotten upset and she was tired of him touching her, and then starting a fire at the residence before departing in the deceased's car. A neighbor called 911 to report the fire at Volar's home. Police found and identified his burned body and showed bullets in his head. His car was abandoned in Milwaukee, and the police found a receipt in the vehicle and traced it to Kizer and was arrested at her boyfriend's home in Milwaukee. Now, she was incarcerated in the Kenosha County Detention Facility, and bail was set at $1 million because the concept of bail is how dangerous are you to those that you are, how dangerous are you to the community, and what is your flight risk? Chrystul Kizer does not sound like as much of a flight risk as her abuser or danger to her community. And so that's the bail conversation, because bail reform is something that, as we are seeing in the Kizer case here, $1 million for Chrystul Kizer sounds obscene. And bail reform is at the heart of the Waukesha Christmas parade attack, because it's a city that has tried bail reform, and he got out so much easier because of the bail reform. So how do you evaluate that risk? Where do you set that bail? That's a conversation that plays into both of these things that we could talk about now or in a future episode. But something to keep in mind. Now, the lead prosecutor stated that the murder was premeditated. The prosecution agreed that Volar was an abuser, but further stated that Kizer planned to steal his car, as indicated by being armed with the gun, and that she downloaded a police scanner app the day of the shooting. In her first press interview, Kizer disputed the initial police statement to the Post and said she killed Volar in self-defense because he had her pinned down and was attempting to sexually assault her. Her lawyers plan to argue an affirmative defense, a Wisconsin state law that allows one to be acquitted of all charges if a crime was committed by someone being sex trafficked. There are no known cases where the affirmative defense has been used in an offense involving a violent crime, just in defensive maneuvers. The judge ruled that Chrystul did not have access to the affirmative defense law for trafficking victims. So obviously there are two, like these other two cases, there's the environment surrounding the facts surrounding the entirety of the case, and then there is the moment of self-defense. Reactions to that story. Harry, what are your thoughts on it?
My knee-jerk first reaction to this story was, good for her.
Right. It's sort of like when you hear that Rosenbaum is a serial child molester, and you're just like, he couldn't have known that, but I'm not going to feel sorry for him.
Well, I don't know. We also don't know if he had a raging boner when he was chasing him down. But the thing is, when it comes to crimes, until like we get a lot, because they keep pushing this trial back and around, which is like awful. This trial should have happened. This woman's life is on pause. It has been on pause for 5 years.
But you know why? It's because one Kenosha case, he had access to a ton of money for a lawyer, and she has public defenders. Probably not now because there has been fundraising. But this shows you this, like, it's not that public defenders aren't skilled. They deal with cases more than anyone else, but they don't have time. You're going to get 10 to 20 hours with the public defender, where imagine how many hours the lawyer representing Rosenhaus or Rittenhouse or whatever, how many hours he was able to spend on that case. You don't have the same level of hours spent trying to parse things out, making motions, trying to follow up with things. You're lucky if you're going to get a call back in 2 weeks. Versus a guy who's basically in your living room living with you, trying to get you off. And that's where there's been a huge movement across the country to fund more public defenders. I am all for that. One of the legitimate functions of government is this particular function and making sure that justice is met. And it's an issue of inequality when we have wildly underfunded the public defender system across the country. In most counties, you take a county like Brown County, a small rural county, they don't have public offenders. They give a low income stipend to local lawyers to act as public defenders, and you get the same result. And it's a real problem. If you're never going to really hear me advocating for an increase in government spending, but this is going to be the rare exception, Harry.
Yeah. Well, it's a whole argument when somebody was like, universal healthcare, cool. How does universal lawyering? How is that working out for everybody?
Right.
Can we fix that first? Let's fix this first. But this woman's life has been on pause for about 5 years.
Well, you want to know what was? But you know what was before the public defender system? They would draft lawyers and say it was their civic duty to represent these people, and they would not get paid. And so lawyers claimed basically that it was takings, that the state can't force you to work all these hours for free. And so that's how the public defender system was set up. And there was a Supreme Court case that said you can't just steal hours from lawyers. And claim.
Can you imagine Abdul talking about that?
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, the heck was I?
Lawyers have been stealing me for 2 years, so I'm happy to steal from them. But I get it; you should be paid for your skill. But you go ahead. Harry.
Completely paid for your skill. Almost forgot where I was. Yeah. So all right. So this woman's life has been on pause for 5 years. Like the third time starting this argument. There's a lot to be discovered on this whole case and to be put out, because there's some that are out there, but the one thing I really want to know about this case is the events leading up to the event, because the whole she downloaded the police scanner, she did all the premeditated. What if she was planning on just stealing the damn car to get some money to get away from this person, or just to scare him to get away from this person? Because most traffickers, right? When she was out, they're probably just going to come out and discover neighbor probably had communications, and they're probably going to try to start this back up again. And she's just, just like anyone else, it's basically going back into slavery. And then she fought to get out of it. So that's what. Now, could I be wrong when things come out? We're like, oh, no, the completed thing. She went there. She instigated it all. Yeah, that could have came. That probably will come out. I don't know. But if it comes out that, this was, he basically threatened her family, or got her to go back out and, basically convincing her to get back on the sex plantation so he can live his life of cushy luxury. Nah, good for her. Give her the medal.
Tricia?
Sorry.
Unmute.
Excuse me. There we go. I kind of had the same initial reaction Harry did. And I'm actually bail reform is something kind of close to me. I've worked on it here with the Cuyahoga Coalition for Jail and Bail Reform, because there's a lot of major issues with it. I know that we were touching on that because obviously she was given a ridiculous amount of money. She's a young person and nobody should ever be held over for trial that long. That's ridiculous, also unconstitutional. But a lot of times people with that get drug charges or victimless crimes, they can't afford the bail. And in 2019 in Cuyahoga County Jail, there were 8 men awaiting that couldn't meet bail with nonviolent drug charges that died in there. That's how bad that place is. They weren't given their insulin, things like that. So there's a real problem with the bail system. And I'm a big proponent of bail reform, especially for nonviolent crimes.
Another issue in this is that she was in jail for so long that so many people plead out and admit to crimes that they did not commit because they cannot get the representation that they need. And they spend so much time in jail that they just say, all right, I want out, so I'm going to plead down and admit to this crime so I can get out of jail instead of waiting for my trial because they can't get a speedy trial.
Right. Yeah. And absolutely what was done to her is horrendous. Whether or not, and I'm sorry, I don't know, even if it came out that she had planned this, if I lived in a life of sex trafficking, I would probably spend months thinking of how I'm going to get out and plan it down to the T. And I think if that all proves to be true, that she really was in this, sold into sex slavery, basically, even though, she may have initially gone into it out of just complete need.
Well, this goes into self-defense, Tricia. We have plenty of friends who have been trying to get out of situations of domestic violence, sexual abuse with, and I don't know anything about this guy, but I'm just going to guess that he's probably some narcissistic abuser type, probably not a great person. The system does not protect women like that. And oftentimes you take like the Zach, what was the NFL player this week who his wife or girlfriend basically had to film a camera of him, pointed it in the house. He's slamming her through the table, calling her all kinds of names. That's not the first time that's happened. The reason that it's probably being filmed is that she's gone to the police or she's gone to friends and family. Nobody's helping her doing anything. So what a point when you're trapped in that cycle, does the cycle become a weapon and you're using self-defense, Tricia? Zach Stacy, Thank you, Dion.
I do believe that is self-defense. If you have to plan to kill somebody because otherwise they're going to eventually kill you or they won't let you go, they're holding you hostage, basically. I think that's self-defense. Now, I don't know what the law is going to say about it in that case, but I know you spoke about something about sex trafficking, how they passed a new law about that in Wisconsin.
It's under coercion, and that is the act specifically calls out a victim of a violation of sex trafficking laws and things like that has an affirmative defense for any offense committed as a direct result of the violation of those sex trafficking laws without regard to whether anyone was prosecuted or convicted of that violation. So if she's got proof, now, Dennis, this is going to be one of those fuzzy ones. I'm probably going to agree with you. Someone's going to have to sit down and interpret this of whether she can say that, heat of the moment, I think all of us are probably like, yeah, this is a clear, open and shut case. If he's standing in the room and she's got a gun and she knows what's coming, boom. She drove up there. I still kind of agree with you, Trish. She had no way of getting out of this. It's fantasy land to think, well, she could have just taken an Uber to Chicago, then hopped on a plane to California.
Just call the police.
All right,
so they'll let him go.
I'm going to play the role of the listener who has posted the meme of Rittenhouse being a hero, and I saw plenty of conservatives when I posted about this in the comment thread saying, this wasn't self-defense, lock her up forever. Meanwhile, they're like, super pro Rittenhouse. So all these conservatives who the second that it's a poor black woman, they just weirdly have a different opinion.
So strange. I don't know how that.
I know.
Yeah.
The reality is, okay, if this is self-defense and she's trying to get out of this abusive cycle, what's to stop? Let's say Reagan and I have a really rough period and I'm being a real jerk and she just claims it's self-defense and kills me and then Harry accidentally lets Jeremiah take over the Wall Empire. Like, what if we have determined self-defense in the Arbery and the Rittenhouse case so far in this episode to be a split-second moment of decision where Rosenbaum is less than 4 feet from you and you have to turn and fire, that's self-defense. Driving across town and saying, oh, gee, this is self-defense. I mean, now it's her word against the deceased that she was being sexually assaulted. In that case, all bets are out, right? Like your person's being violated by an abuser, blow his head off. I mean, burn down his house. That's cool. But let's say that's not the truth. What do we do with that?
Yeah. Yeah, if the sex trafficking thing like turns out to be like a false claim, there's like, or it just gets completely thrown out, and this turns into just a premeditated murder. This is like a crime of passion. They just had a relationship like that. Okay, I'll give you. Yeah. It's premeditated murder.
But let's say she was being sex trafficked, which is proven. But I'm saying in the moment she premeditates that she's going to drive across town, kill him, and burn his house down and steal his car, like the prosecution is saying. Is that self-defense? Even though she's gone through some horrible things?
Is he probably actively going to get her back into sex trafficking and continue the cycle of abuse? Honestly, I don't know. It could be my damaged past, but yeah, kind of same self-defense to me.
And it's in the law. I mean, that's the thing, is this Wisconsin law calls it out specifically as an affirmative defense. So, I mean, if that law doesn't exist and there's no affirmative defense, yeah, she's kind of screwed, unfortunately.
Part of the problem, and the reason why there's an affirmative defense for that, is because in the sex trafficking situations, usually there's a lot of psychological manipulation that's being done on the person. They are not being able to act rationally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And they are desperate to train. And usually the reality is they go to the police and are told that they don't not believed. They try to file a report. Was it 6% of rape cases are even looked at or investigated in any way? Mm-hmm. And those are just the ones that are people go to report. Most women don't even report them anymore because of that. So she's probably someone in that situation who's been psychologically traumatized, who is scared to walk out her door, can't say no to the person. I mean that was the case with pimps and prostitutes. That's probably where they came from, that law. So there you go. I mean, you've gotta look at that situation. Now, I don't know in this specific case if that's the case or not. I mean, that's something that's going to have to be investigated and find out. But what really I don't understand is that you're saying that she's been sitting there for 5 years waiting for this to go to court. You're supposed to have a speedy trial in this country.
Yeah.
And they should be forcing their hand on that, the unconstitutionality of being in jail that long, especially someone who is claiming to be a victim of sex trafficking and being held against her will. Right? I mean, now you're holding her against her will for the punishment of that. And it doesn't make any sense. I mean, the guy who ran over the people in the parade earlier in the year, he had a reckless endangerment arrest last summer, I think it was. And was it 6 months later, he demands early release out of jail because he wasn't getting a speedy trial. That was 6 months. And they reduced his bond to $500 and let him out.
Yeah, so a couple details. So if you haven't heard, on November 21st, around 4:30, a red Ford Escape SUV driven at about 40 miles per hour broke through barricades and drove through the annual Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin. One police officer banged on the hood of the SUV in an attempt to get the driver to stop. Another officer fired his gun to stop the vehicle. The parade was being live streamed, sadly. 2 eyewitnesses told reporters that the driver did not stop initially, and all they could hear was people screaming. He rammed in. 5 people were killed. 48 others were injured. They were identified as 4 women, 1 man. Hospitals admitted 28 people. 9 were in critical condition. The number of injuries is now 62. The fatalities has increased to 6 after an 8-year-old child died at the hospital. 17 more were children among the wounded. Prosecutors said a total of 13 children remain hospitalized. The ages ranged from 8 to 81 in terms of those. Now, David Edward Brooks Jr. is a man with an extensive criminal record. He had been arrested 21 days prior to the Waukesha attack for hitting his ex-girlfriend with the same SUV during a domestic dispute. The charges against him for that case included a second-degree recklessly endangering safety with domestic abuse assessments, a felony, as well as a disorderly conduct with domestic abuse assessments, misdemeanor battery with domestic abuse assessments, and obstructing an officer. He posted $1,000 bail on November 23rd, 2 days before the Waukesha attack, and was released. Brooks also has a warrant for a sex crime in Nevada. Brooks was arrested the night of the attack, soon after telling a Waukesha resident that he was homeless and was waiting for an Uber. The man was unaware of the events that had occurred and let Brooks into his home. Brooks had been charged with 5 counts of first-degree intentional homicide following the death of a victim. Brooks's bond was set at $5 million, and he remains in custody. They have no motive for the attack, but they believe he acted alone and did not know anyone at the parade. It was not a terrorist attack. They're investigating whether Brooks had been fleeing from a nearby domestic disturbance when encountering the parade, and it was accidental that he committed these murders. So that's where some critics of this to say that this is where bond reform has gone wrong. Dion made a comment here. So it's not about the law; it's about the financial situation. I know Dion Curry, my co-host from the Pat Down, well enough to know that he is a democratic socialist, on which we argue about many things, and believes that the entire financial system of the country needs to be reformed to help people who are disadvantaged have more equality in terms of finances compared to the wealthy. A noble goal, but how do we assess that? Like, these are some of the people that we have talked about, specifically Chrystul Kizer, are poor people. And why are they poor? Why is this girl why is she turning to sex trafficking? If you eliminate some of those ills, wouldn't you get more justice if we have... And now my first initial reaction is you start decriminalizing and reducing the drug war, if not canceling it altogether. Let's start there, because then you alleviate an incredible amount of pressure on the criminal justice system. And as Harry points out, you can't test a rape kit, but drugs less than 24 hours return back results.
Bad results in most of the cases.
And bad results, and lock those people up. I guarantee Daryl Edwards, if you go back, Daryl Edward Brooks Jr., if you go back in his past, it starts with a continuing spiral of a criminality, and it probably starts with a drug charge. And this is my main criticism of Joe Biden. You had Trump prime the well for criminal justice reform. A lot of Republicans, at least in the majority of the public, would support criminal justice reform. You could have been a transformative president in reversing the stuff that you put in place, and instead you're only going to enrich road construction crews in your presidency. Rhinehold, what do you say to that?
Well, I think it's kind of Pollyanna to think that the Republicans who are primed for
no, Republican politicians
if they were going to support it with Democrat president, it was never going to
Ryan
happen.
Lindsay made the same retort back to me. Politicians are a lagging indicator. They support what the majority of their people support, what the public supports. You have the public that wants to see action on a lot of these things,
right?
And therefore,
how does
the politicians will follow?
That's bull, because there's things that have there's 60-70% of this country is pro legalization of marijuana. We still have states where it's illegal.
Yeah.
Indiana is one of those states. We've got federal laws still against it. It's not that they're going to do whatever it is. What they're going to do is they're going to make sure to never actually fix the problem, because if they do, then they lose that point to argue with on elections.
We have Miss Pat. We have Miss Pat weighing in. Fuck y'all, little dicks, guys. And
I'm okay with that.
And then Joshua Smith disagreeing with both my background and Rhinehold.
Oh, I could give a
now. Dion says, Dion says it's only a problem if you're poor. Is my point. The law is supposed to be for everyone, but the justice system is for the wealthy, and we completely, unequivocally, all agree on that.
Because the laws only is not applied equally either. Right. You could say, but it's not. If I'm wealthy and my son goes to jail, gets arrested with, I don't know, some coke in his pocket or whatever, he's probably going to be home with a great lawyer tomorrow. If some guy, gets arrested with maybe he has crack in his pocket, he's going to go home. He's going to lose his job. He's not going to go back to his family. He's not going to be able to get a job. He's not going to be able to get a lawyer. So it just starts this cycle, it never stops. And like you said, Chris, that guy's his life probably started like that.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say the one great thing that's happening, though, Trish, like you said about not being able to get a job and things like that. The great thing is the great resignation that's happening right now is breaking down those barriers for those people that have drug felonies and things like that. So all of a sudden now people are so desperate they're willing to go ahead and put that aside. But Dion's 100% correct. And also I'm going to say Rhinehold's correct on this. The laws in a lot of cases are so ridiculously large and conflicting that you've got to have a good attorney, or at least someone with some coherent thought, to be able to try to format a defense against this mass amount of laws that's out there. So you kind of have to sit there and go through this. And if you're poor, you're not going to have the wherewithal to go through this. You're not going to have access to it, other than you have 20 minutes in the library. Go find the law that's going to get, or
any one of the five of us, and not just the poor or the low income folks. Anyone on this Zoom right now, or whatever we're calling it, the five of us would have a really hard time affording a lawyer to take on a major charge. I mean, the damn Bidenomics. So let's talk about Ghislaine Maxwell. We've only got about 5 minutes before I have to go record the pat down here. But Harry wanted to talk about Ghislaine Maxwell, and I keep seeing people talk about, you see all about Rittenhouse and you see nothing about Ghislaine Maxwell. Harry, is this not your attempt to reach out to the Pizzagate crowd? Why should we be talking about Ghislaine Maxwell? Why is this meaningful?
First off, you forget about the hidden basement at the. No. I'm not trying to reach out to Pizzagate people. If they're still on Pizzagate, they're out there. They're out there.
Pizzagator people too.
They're out there buying crappy. They're out there buying crappy moisturizer, trying to keep their red hair. All right. So, anyways. This is more of just saying, like, yes, people are watching this case, and it's harder. And also the bullcrap of federal cases that we're not be able to see inside the courtroom. No cameras. What kind of awful 18th century bullcrap is this? Like, nope. You could bring in somebody with some colored pencils and stuff like that, and you can see what's going on. It's the exact same thing that happened to the Ross Ulbricht trial, that we can't see what the heck is going on there because of the bullcrap that it comes out, especially in federal court. But people are watching. People are going to watch this case, and I think they keep hampering on. If you watch these cases, watch this case too. It's very important because crap is happening. Like even the judge is like the New York Times even pointed out some of the thing about the judge in the case is possibly up for promotion. Because Joe Biden's probably put the judge up for promotion.
So for those who don't know who Ghislaine Maxwell is, she's known for her association with financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who did not kill himself. She worked for her father, Robert Maxwell, a wealthy British newspaperman. In 1991, she moved to the United States, became a close associate of Epstein. She founded a nonprofit group for the protection of oceans, the Terra Mar Project, in 2012. The organization folded in 2019. She is charged by the U.S. federal government with crimes of enticement of minors and sex trafficking of underage girls. The U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Justice announced on July 2020 that Maxwell is also under investigation in the Caribbean territory. She has extensive ties because of her wealth to people like Bill Clinton, Alan Dershowitz, Prince Andrew, and many other wealthy and powerful people. She is believed to be the keeper of many of Epstein's secrets, and the roots of which go deep into basically trafficking young women to wealthy and powerful people. And Harry, would you say, and anybody feel free to agree or disagree, that the reason it's not being televised is to protect those powerful people, the financial interests, and the wealthy? Go ahead, Rhinehold.
It's a federal law that they can't televise it.
Right.
Correct.
It's a shitty federal law.
It's a shitty federal law.
It should be gotten rid of. It's unconstitutional, in my opinion. I think every trial should be televised, but it is what it is. I don't think it's special in this case that they're blocking it because of the situation. It's a federal law.
Yeah, it's not like some special thing. There are things that are going around that case because there's also like some of them with the civil suit of some people, some of the big names that are also like lodged at this thing that are bringing her out on charges, like the Warner Media Group, Disney, like most major companies that the conspiracy theory that they have peddled like in sex trafficking or having kids is possibly named or possibly as co-conspirators in some of these civil suits that are going around this case. So it is an interesting thing to go around. Like, and I mentioned, because if you look into Ghislaine Maxwell's past, it's like you find out even like the death of her father, like did her father really kill himself? When all that pension money was like
91, he was found floating in the sea near the Canary Islands, and the lady Ghislaine. Soon afterwards, Ghislaine flew to Tenerife, where the yacht was berthed to attend to its business paperwork. She attended her father's funeral in Jerusalem along various Israeli intelligence figures. Chaim Herzog and Prime Minister Shamir. Now, she also was on the run for a significant amount of time. I'm trying to flip through here to see exactly, to give you the details of her bail, but it took
and that's
them,
one thing I want.
They
I'm hoping to come out in trial is like how they actually did finally really come up and find her. Did her OPSEC kindly fail out because of where they found her? They found her in this BFE area inside of New Hampshire, and when I say BFE, it's a part of New Hampshire that I've only drawn by because it's outside of Concord. It is not it's around one of the major highways or state roads. It's out there in the BFE.
The Book of Knowledge, Wikipedia says Maxwell faced persistent allegations of procuring and sexually trafficking underage girls for Epstein and others, charges she has denied. Maxwell was arrested in Bradford, New Hampshire by the FBI on July 2nd, 2020, more than a year after the charges, after allegations were made. Through the use of an IMSI catcher, a Stingray mobile phone tracking device on a phone used by her to call one of her lawyers, her husband Scott Borgenson, and her sister Isabel. She is charged with the enticement of minors, sex trafficking of children, and perjury. It's basically been said that the risks of her fleeing are too great. They have charged her with 6 federal crimes, including enticement of minors.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I don't think that she got any bail here.
She's been remanded, surprisingly. But her defense is going to be that she was a victim of Epstein's malevolence and controlling personality.
Yeah. Well,
if that's the case, she should be doing what everybody thought she should be doing, and that is cooperating and turning over names. Now, if she doesn't do that, then she can't still be a victim of somebody who's dead now.
Right.
But she just saw what happened to her boss. So, I mean, she probably likes still consuming oxygen at this point. So,
she claims that she's being tortured in prison. They are keeping lights on her at all times. They're playing loud music, that they're basically monitoring her for the same risks. Hopefully, Epstein, the video doesn't get cut off. Never mind. All right, well, we got to go. I've got to make a 12 o'clock appointment. I wish we could give you all time to wrap up. It's been a great conversation. Thank you to Harry and Rhinehold and Brian and Tricia for the great conversation. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers. We appreciate it. Thank you for everyone that's wished me well on the wedding. Harry will be in next Saturday for me, and then we'll be posting sporadically through the month of December. Various podcast episodes as I get married, go on my honeymoon, and all that good stuff. So, Dion says I have another hour. I have not seen the text messages, so thank you. Let's go around the room.
You just ruined him getting out of here. You could just let it go, and he could have got an hour lunch break.
Thank you, Joshua. It's 12 Texas time. Okay. All right. So with that...
Now we know the real brains behind the operation.
I'll go first. Eliminate time zones.
Right.
Everybody go on GMT.
Very libertarian.
We all have the same time, and we
UTC.
All
right, tie it all.
From doing that.
Tie it all.
No, we're going to do one time zone, but UTC. No, this is Greenwich Mean Time. No, UTC time. Sorry.
All right, tie it all in a little bow. Let's start with Harry. Go ahead.
All right, so I will say this: no one is under any obligation to follow any of these trials. You are under none. There is not life, liberty, and the watching every case that happens. None. If you don't want to follow any of this, you don't want to do this, you want to turn your sports on and go have sports, go ahead, do that. Just don't peddle fake news and just read the articles and just keep going. Don't do that. Okay? If you're not going to follow, don't give your opinion. Just say, hey, I don't follow the case.
What if the news is peddling fake news?
Well, I plan on doing a low-key episode about that. Is the whole idea of perfectly honest, I'm under the belief that CNN made Rittenhouse. Them gaslighting everybody about Blake brought the riots around him and created Rittenhouse. A lot of these things. So I'm sorry, the media gaslights people and things happen. And it's all right. I was going to bring I've got a whole show that I've got notes about talking about this. You just little watch.
Save it for the air.
Yeah, save it. Yeah, it's probably when you work on things, you just got to have it there ready on the go. But it's like I said, it's just if you be a word and just take in opinion, if it's the idea, if you're not following it, you don't have any hard details, don't dig your heels in the ground. if someone goes like, hey, I heard this. All right, where'd you hear this from? Okay, let me listen to it. Be open-minded if you're not following it. Digging your heels in just because you've heard from, Joe Blow that this thing is going to happen. I'm like, well, come on. You're not following it.
And if you check in too, like the mom driving him to the rally thing persisted until roughly the last week of the trial. Like, but I saw people repeating that. It's like, I repeated it at certain points, like, and then you'd like watch the trial, get the facts. Like, don't have a strong opinion unless you check in after a trial and kind of figure out what's going on
and be willing to change your strong opinion.
Yeah,
because fact may change, and that's
correct.
You should. Oh, and I live.
Listen, there's a strong concept in Chinese culture and Asian cultures. It's saving face because people, and we don't have that here. Where if you were wrong 5 years ago, you were forever tarnished, as opposed to allowing people to update their opinions based on information. And I think that's one thing that we can all practice is like, all right, I'll show you a little grace if you were wrong, but don't be persistently wrong and dig in your heels that you are wrong all the time.
Yeah, and saving face is a detriment to Chinese society. It is a detriment to the CCP. I will say the CCP, especially when I mention China. Remember, when I say that, I mentioned the CCP government because the CCP is not China. Okay, that is very also like those. Remember, the CCP is not China. It's one party rule. They took over. It's a coup attempt. CCP is not China. Whew. Yeah, but the whole saving face thing is like.
By the way, I see Wolf Warrior diplomacy everywhere since you talked about it here a few months ago.
God.
Yeah, like I said, didn't coin the term, but like, yeah, it's you see it once you see it and recognize that someone puts it up to your face. You see it, and you can even. And the other thing that's going to come up too is like the whole because of the whole U.S.'s diplomatic stance. I'm going to stop me here in a bit. Is the U.S.'s stance with China doing this whole kind of reciprocity.
All right,
if
that's
you're not
enough.
going to give us X, we're not going to get X from you, which is I feel is a completely dangerous road to go on. I understand the benefits from it, but I feel it's very dangerous. But that's me.
All right, Tricia Stewart, final thoughts.
Yes, mine aren't going to be about the Communist Party in China. Number one, this is the most important thing of this whole episode. I think it's Ghislaine Maxwell. Anyways,
fuck her.
No, along the same lines,
you can barely get my patrons' names right, let alone
I know this.
Some prostitution lady or whatever.
I think you called Rittenhouse him
Rosenhaus. Yeah. Listen, since I had COVID in September, like I said at the top, my brain has not been the same. I'm fumbling everywhere.
So yeah, I'm kind of interested to see what happens, at least what information we get from that trial. But as far as what gets televised in the media, basically what gets shown the most is what is the most politically divisive. People don't particularly want justice in the media per se. The two power teams, the Republicans and Democrats, or they don't particularly are looking for justice. They're looking to make people angry and gain more people on their side. So I think a lot of times criminal trials are used for political gain, obviously. So just remember that before you get really angry about something. It is better to seek justice. And if you can't find justice, then just seek peace. You live a happier life.
Okay. All right. No, I'm just kidding. Brian, go ahead.
I was going to continue Harry's thing. I've got this theory about pyramids and numbers and everything and proves it all to. No, just kidding. No. And yes, the CCP is the most evil thing that's on the planet at this moment that we know of. There's probably some more evil things, but no, I mean,
Fauci. Go ahead.
He's just wrong a lot.
There's a lot of metropolitan police departments I could throw in there, but that's okay.
Yeah, that too.
No. Hubris. It's called hubris. Okay, hubris. That's Fauci is hubris.
Yeah. I was just kidding. Yeah, I agree. China can't get much worse than China. Go ahead, Brian. Final thoughts on the episode.
I mean, the thing is that in the end, this Aubrey, all the other things, it's the terms, fuck around and find out. And in a lot of cases, people are doing that for the wrong and right reasons. There's another case that's just come up recently about that Rhinehold shared about a shooting with a stepdad. And it's terrible that people could have walked away. Kyle could have stayed in that building. They could have, in the Aubrey trial, the guys could have just taken his picture and drove home and called the police and say, hey, we saw this guy, you may want to talk to him. A lot of other things could have happened that got us to this situation, but this is kind of the truth for all of these tragic events. You change one thing, tragedy is averted. So I think there is responsibility if you have a firearm or somebody has a firearm, but I also think that you have a responsibility as well to understand that the worst case scenario may happen with that, and you ought to pray every morning that you never have to use it. So, but if you do, unfortunately, you have to be judicious with it. So it's unfortunate, but I do think that the Ghislaine Maxwell and things like that, all of these trials are fantastic that they're happening because we're getting a lot more information now. It used to be a paragraph in a newspaper and we'd all glance at it and forget about it tomorrow. Now we're starting to get a lot more information. We're starting to see a lot more of the things like in the Aubrey trial where the DA was finally indicted for hiding that. So there's some good coming out of this, and I'd like to keep it moving forward.
Rhinehold?
I guess my final thoughts are that I think that the political atmosphere in this country needs to calm itself down. We need to stop hating each other, calling each other names and being mean just because we disagree. Is even people I can look at right now in chat that we need to, that might need to do that.
See, are you helping or hurting? Are you helping or hurting the environment?
Yeah.
No, I think there should be grace and peace in this country, and we're just not doing it. It's getting to the point where congressmen are actually, saying horrible and mean things, that making it a really horrible working environment, right? I mean, I know we used to cane each other on the Senate floor, and that happened right before Civil War. Let's try not to get back to that. And that's what I'm worried about happening, because that's what I'm seeing. And we were close in the 60s and 70s. We had a lot of race riots and shootings and things like that. And I don't want to come back to that. It's not a good time. I think a lot of people are comfortable because they grew up in a time where it was relatively politicians were relatively nice to each other. They respected each other. They worked with each other, even if they were on a different side of the aisle. And it's gotten away from that. To where it's just completely divisive and everybody wants to hate on somebody and nobody wants to listen to anybody's point of view or change their mind. And it's just ridiculous. And I'd like to see us change it. I don't know how we do it. Other than everybody who agrees with me, just stop doing that and starts trying to be better people.
Harry wants to know when the caning starts.
Canning or caning?
I was going to say the canning.
Canning.
I'll be doing
canning.
apple butter soon.
Yeah, I was going to say, I got we can get started next week.
Tricia is such a trad dad.
I have become.
Well, remember they sent a bunch of canes to the senator after he did that. So he had a whole bunch of them.
Oh yeah, no, it was the House of Representatives. It was a representative who was the cousin of, was it Calhoun or some Southern, I think it was a representative of Tennessee, like walked into the Senate and just beat the hell out of, was it Sumner?
Yeah, Sumner.
Sumner, a senator who was an abolitionist senator. And then, the guy who did the beating became a national hero. And could
in the South.
Yeah. Well, certain parts of the North too. Well, let's be honest.
And the Pacific Northwest, right?
Yeah, in the Pacific Northwest.
Where Harry likes him.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. We hope that you learned something. If you got something out of it, please share with your friends and let them know that there is a place where nice debate can be modeled. You got to see a little bit of Rhinehold and Brian arguing in person. We see it in chat almost every day. There isn't a day that goes by that somebody in our co-host chat isn't arguing with somebody. And Harry, you really need to pop in and weigh in. Get on Facebook. Come on, man.
Come on, you gotta get that blood pressure elevated.
Yeah,
heart rate going. That's how we do it here.
If you can't have a heart attack because your friends disagree with you, then what are you doing in life? Speaking of which,
how hard it is to keep a 119 blood pressure being black in America. Okay, all right. I'm holding on that for dear life.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you again soon.